Hey guys, Philosopher here, and today I'm doing my roster review for the month of May 2021. And in my roster review, what I do is I talk through for you the investments that I've made over the past month, why I've made the investments, and then what investments I'm planning to make in the weeks and months ahead so that you guys can get a sense of how I think about my roster, what I'm building, what I'm planning to build, and why. And for the first time, guys, I'm going to be adding a lot of context to this. And here's why. In the past, I had a roster that I would call very lean. I had super invested in the very best characters, and I invested in almost nothing in the rest of my roster. I had a lean roster. So when I entered GD4, for example, I only had 7.8 million TCP. When I finished DD4, and I was literally, the fourth guy who finished DD4, I had, only about 10 million TCP or so, and that has grown a lot. So during my last video, which you may have seen last month, here is where I was at. I was in my same alliance. I was at 11.7 million TCP. And that was 39 days ago. That was a 386 days played. Now I'm 425 days played, and 39 days later, I am at a very different spot in my roster. I am actually now, I've gone from 11.769 here to, here to 13.1 million. So I've gained about 1.4 million in 39 days. And why did I do that? And it's for two reasons. One, I'm now in a diamond alliance. I am actually the smallest person in that alliance by a huge margin. So I need to keep up with everybody else in the alliance just so I can compete in our wars and I'm not a drag on the rest of the alliance, which is important. So I've been building up for that. But also, I've been doing content creation, and that means that I've been building up new characters just to test them out for you guys in videos and stream. People in my stream will like me on to do it, and I know that people like seeing the new characters in DD4 and the last, and so I will bring them up. So when I go over my building, I will tell you what I built up just for streaming purposes and where I think you should be building it so that this way, this is not a flexing kind of video. This is a video about teaching you how you should think about your roster and building. So we're going to focus it on that. All right. One thing you're going to notice, by the way, if you compare the two videos, my entire roster has come up just because Stark Tech has increased for me. I am still a newer player. I have not completed Stark Tech. But let's talk about some of the characters that I've really built up. And one of the teams that I've really built up is X Factor, just because there's now two new members of the team. So I already had Longshot and Shatterstar exactly where they're at now. G15, 7 red star for Longshot. I didn't think Shatterstar was worth a gold promo. Just because, really that just helps the barrier. He's more of a guy who sets up Longshot and the others in the team. But this past month, Multiple Man and Polaris came into the game, and I brought him right to G15. Now, if I was not streaming, first of all, I wouldn't have brought him up in one day. I would have paced it out so I stayed within those gold spender milestones. But I also wouldn't have brought them to G15 right away. I think Multiple Man would be just fine at G14. For example, I don't really think you need him. He's annoying enough, I think, at G14. I don't think you need him at G15. Similarly with Polaris, she's a character who, in the future, I think you're going to want to have big to make X Factor competitive. But for right now, I think X Factor is great with just a heavy investment with the Dad Bro. So you may be able to get away with a lot less investment here than I did. But look, this team is awesome. And obviously, I'm punching up, against 700, 800K teams. So having a good sized X Factor is helpful at the level of war that I'm at now in Diamond. Now, one team that I have not gone all out on is the Astonishing X-Men. Of course, I wasn't streaming when these first came out, but I got to tell you, I actually think there's an advantage to having Iceman and Kitty Pryde smaller because I actually have them flanking Bishop. I have Bishop in the middle with Iceman and Kitty next to him. I have a huge Bishop, and essentially when Iceman or Kitty lose health, That just gives speed bar to Beast, who's a way better character than they are. Note the ISO setup. You want a huge bishop with a striker. Jubilee and Beast just need to stay alive, and Jubilee needs to land her debuff, so G14 level 80 is good enough for them. All right, now the next team I do want to, or the one thing I do want to note here, though, is I did buy the 6th red star for Bishop. I just had a lot of gold promos laying around. Although I will say this, after spending on Bishop and one other character, I felt like, geez, I'm sitting at 700 something gold promos. I need to spend some. Now Kestrel entered the game and Surfer, so all my gold promos are accounted for going forward. I'll show you that in a minute. But in fact, now let's talk about Kestrel and Surfer. So at the time we made the video last time, my Silver Surfer was only 4 red, 4 yellow. Now it's up to 6 stars and 5 red stars. I just got a random pull on the 5 red, and then the 6 stars have just come from offers and from raid milestones. He hasn't been built up anymore. I maxed him for videos last time. But Kestrel, I have built up right on day one, as big as I could possibly make her. Obviously, she's new to the game, and a humongous boon for my roster. I will say I really think Kestrel is the number one character to invest in at this point. Her and Silver Surfer are going to be 1 and 2 on my top 10 list that's coming out later this month. She is amazing, transforms the experience and the skill nodes of the Doom Raid in particular. Also a huge help in tech and helpful in arena and helpful in war. I'm using her in all game modes. Definitely worth a max investment. Kestrel and Silver Surfer are where people should be focusing their investment right now. Now, one character I did bring up, and it was really for 2 reasons. One, for making videos, but also because I run the Doom Raid every day and I have to do 100% daily now in my alliances. I brought up Nick Fury. I had Nick Fury at 7 red stars, but he was at like G12 or G13 last time. I brought him up to G15. I did his ultimate and passive, and that's because he got reworked to go alongside Kestrel. Now I use him on the boss node, and I'm either one-shotting or easily two-shotting the node with a timeout, as opposed to having a frustrating experience of 3 attacks on the boss node for skill. I mean, I did that video recently of the skill nodes in the Doom Raid, and he has really transformed my experience there. Also, this gives me a 5th legendary, which I've never had for DD4, and I have to keep rerunning DD4 for you guys to do videos, so it was worth it for that alone. It helped having a 5th character, but he's been awesome. I use him in Alliance War Offense with Kestrel as well. Very, very good character for me. More on that in the future, but he's worth it for me to build. This is a character that I think you could get away with him at G14. I know one of our viewers had him at G14, 4 red stars, and had no problem one-shotting the skill boss node in the Doom Raid. All right, now let's talk about some of the investments I made that are more questionable because of the TCP that I am at now, the level of war. So one thing I did is in my last video I had Supernatural G11 in purple gear, level 60, and as you could see I brought up Strange and Ghost Rider and Mordo all to G14, and I did all the essentials on the 4 that would go in Hella Natural. We did a video and I showed that off to you with Night King. Unfortunately, guys, the Hella Natural team I think has fallen off a little bit because Wave 1 has been broken up, and without Black Widow, it's not as valuable. It's still good against Sinister Six. It's good against the original Wave 1. It has uses in war, but this is an investment that is very questionable for me now. I wouldn't have done this investment today. I did it a month ago because, frankly, I did not see Black Widow being removed from the Wave 1 team. I was surprised that happened. Speaking of crazy type investments, one investment that I definitely would not recommend for others is all of this gear I've been putting into Heroes for Hire. I did this. I certainly got some lucky draws on the orbs for Colleen, multiple 80 drops, so that'll be easy for me to max her out in the Blitz. But, I have to say the big thing here is all this orange gear. And really, what I've done is eaten into my reserves. So I don't know if you guys realize I'm a huge hoarder, and I've been so careful about spending gear in this game. But look where I'm at now. I usually run at about 2 to 3,000, sometimes over 3,000 of these. I have used a lot of the crafted gear from DD4. I usually was running at either between 16 and 20,000 SBCs. I'm sure I had probably 20,000 in the last video. Now I'm at 11. So definitely using a lot of gear on Heroes for Hire. And this is just because I'm in a Diamond Alliance. Not an investment I would recommend for most people if you're not facing some of the top accounts and have tons of extra gear like I have. Something I think is a luxury that'll probably end up getting countered sometime soon. I did make some additional investments in Hydra that I do want to mention as well. I did put a 6 red star on Baron Zemo. He's really been climbing my lists in investment because I'm using him in all game modes now, not only in Alliance War, but he's really helpful in the second node of the Doom Raid. At the time, I was using him in all 3 nodes in the Doom Raid for skill, and very useful in Arena as well, both on offense and defense. Otherwise, this team was the same, except I had to bring Grenadier to 77. Level 77 from level 75 just to make sure that he was the highest damage for Hydra 3.0, which is still a useful war offense team. I also built Brotherhood, which is is a useful team for a variety of respects. I brought Blob, was a G13 level 72. I was in the process of working on this team last time. Now I got him and Magneto, who is a G13 set level 71, both to level 80. G14, that's where they're going to stay. Got towed up to level 75, mostly to just make sure he landed his attacks, his alt and special. But I did pull a 6 red star on him, so that helped as well. And I got Juggernaut up to G13. I know that a lot of you are going to post in the comments saying you should stick at G12 and not go to G13. The only reason I'm doing it, guys, is because I'm the smallest guy in all the wars that I'm in, and I'm trying to keep up with everybody and give every tiny edge I can. And I had a lot of gear sitting around, but I definitely recommend for most people you should stick at G12, level 71, unless you're taking the characters up to G14. And I also think G15 is not as big of a boost as G14. So for most of you, focusing on bringing more characters to G14 is better than bringing a lot to G15. One team I'm going to have to work on more in the future. I've worked on a little bit is I brought stature up a little bit, but I need to work on Pim more just because I'm on an outside lane in Gamma. We do 100% on this, and I got to tell you, I'm getting carried on the boss node, the second mini boss node. You really need to have a big Pim team on that second mini boss node. I don't know if I'm going to build it up well enough to do well on that node. This team does get me through this, and Kree I use with Minerva and Captain Marvel does get me up to that mini boss, but I'll build it up a little bit, maybe bring some of these characters up to level 80. One other team that I worked on a little bit, and this is just gonna, I'll do a little bit more on the side, is X-Force, just bringing up some of these other characters a little bit. X-23 and Negasonic, I'm happy where they're at. I don't think they're worth G15. This whole team is really in the downslope right now, being power crept, but I think it is a worthwhile team to have if you have kind of a complete war roster and you're in endgame and you're done with DD4. The way to build it, by the way, is not to have a humongous Deadpool and try to keep him as the highest damage. That really limits your team because it means your X-23 and Negasonic are small. What you really want to do is have a huge Negasonic that can survive the opening attacks, or a huge X-23, whichever one's the highest damage, and then just build those two large. And Negasonic needs to be big enough to damage the enemies so that X-23 gets speed bar from enemies getting under 50%. That's how you build that team there. In addition, one thing I should mention, by the way, before I move on is, I did talk about Brotherhood here for a minute. On Brotherhood, I will just say the only T4s I have, because I'm still catching up to more experienced players with T4s, is I have the special and the passive on Magneto, and then I have the blob passive. I think that's an absolutely essential T4. You really want a big blob if you're going to do this thing right. That is what, absolutely what you want. There are other T4s that are necessary, but sometimes people drop Pyro out. So, the T4s like his special and stuff are not as necessary as they once were. I should also mention that for X Factor, I do not have many T4s in the team. I have done T4 all on long shot because I use him in so many game modes, but I've only done the alt and passive on multiple man, and then I've done none so far in Polaris, although I plan to do her alt and her passive when I have the spare T4s to do so. One team that I am working on, and I have to say is a bit of a regret in a way, is Symbiotes. I put a lot of effort into not bringing these two guys to G15. I've run DD4 for you guys multiple times just to get to nodes for streaming purposes and for YouTube. And I usually would not run these DD4 more than twice. But I was going to keep these guys at level 75, but I think I end up using these guys everywhere. I mean, I'm using them in Doom Raid bio nodes. I use them in the Greek raids. I use them in Alliance War. I use them everywhere other than Arena. So I just think let's get them up to level 80. There's no reason really for me not to, since I use them everywhere. I'm also, other top characters that I do, use and regret sort of not bringing up more. Hella, I gotta say, I use her every day in Doom Raid. I use her sometimes in Greek raids. I use her in Alliance War Offense. Like, I could see myself bringing her to G15 at some point. But otherwise, the sort of characters I'll be working on in my roster at this point is just bringing Shuri up to level 80. Bringing some of the other characters up to level 80 just because you get a very significant health and damage boost that, like whether it's Hulk for my Wave 1 team, Swarm and Electro, and just keeping them at G12, but nonetheless getting that additional boost, bringing up stature, so it's a little easier for me in the Gamma raids, bringing up maybe even Red Skull, though I don't think he needs it. You're basically having him there just to revive Grenadier and for his special. But, just having a little bit more survivability on some of these characters. But you could see, by the way, the bottom of my roster still very underdeveloped. One character that I think I will be focusing on more in the future is Ultron, because he's underdeveloped compared to most veterans. I mean, he's a character that is expensive to gear, but I could see myself bringing up in the future. And then also Namor, I only have a G12, and in War, he is actually one of the top War characters and has been for quite some time. I do have his alt and passive T Ford. I should note for Ultron, I only have his special T Ford because for me, Ultron's basically just like a buffer, a guy who has bots and so forth. But not somebody that I'm relying on for damage. But if I do bring him up, I'll do more T4s, and certainly if he gets those few red stars make a difference. I'm not so sure they will, but I would consider that. Other characters that have some standalone use. I mean, Merc Riotguard for mercenaries, even though they're starting to fall off, I think getting him up to at least level, getting up his levels might be helpful to me instead of gear. Squirrel Girl, I run with the with X Factor. So I think she's a great standalone cleanser that cleanses debuffs. Crystal, is still useful on my Inhumans team. So there are still a number of characters here that are worth me getting up. But you're getting a sense of what I really don't value that much in my team. The Hydra minions have some use. But overall, you can get by in a Diamond Alliance without all these characters up. And I think what I will be trying to do in the future is doing more of this context giving for you guys, because one thing that I was able to do is get ahead in the game. Certainly I wailed out and bought offers and stuff, but I bought fewer than all these people who have been playing for years, more than me, who have been playing for 1,100 days, who are at the top with 20 something TCP. but I was able to compete with them in DD4 and now in War by focusing my roster. And so I'm going to try to make sure that even if I'm bringing my roster up for videos, that we keep you guys focused on the characters that matter. And that's the way to get ahead in this game, guys. Right now, there's unprecedented power creep. Some of you guys complain about, like, why am I focused on the new characters? It's because characters like Surfer and Kestrel are so ridiculous that you have to, or Longshot or any of them, you have to focus on them in order to just stay up and make sure you're competitive. But the key is to invest in those characters and not invest in characters, let's say like Heroes for Hire, that are only good in a single game mode or that only give you a temporary benefit. What you want is the characters that are going to help you everywhere and that will help you in multiple spots at once so your investment goes the furthest. All right, guys, if you like this video, please smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. If you disagree with me, if you have questions, post them in the comments below or go on my Discord. We have great conversations there about the game. That link is below as well. And of course, I stream every night. Check me out on Twitch. That link is below as well.